And we are live. It's Dr. J in the house with Evan Brand. Evan, how are we doing today, my friend?
Doing good. This plastic stuff is pretty freaky, though. So this is trending news for the week. I guess it'll be trending news for the indefinite future, really. The microplastics are ending up in the brain. Scientists thought, hey, hopefully the blood-brain barrier is going to protect us from these
Mm-hmm.
microplastics, and it does not. And
Mm-hmm.
just this week, 2 days ago, they released a new paper that says here, scientists analyzed the plastic content in the livers, the kidneys, and the brains of autopsied human bodies. Microplastics are in all of the organs. Jesus. Scientists were concerned about the average amount of microplastics in the brain, which apparently is far higher than the liver and the kidneys. So, brain is accumulating the most microplastics, and this 2024 study showed 50% higher than the plastic in the brain samples from 2016. So, man, it is skyrocketing. And what they're finding is that in patients with dementia, the levels of plastic were 6 times higher. So, 6x microplastic in the brain in dementia cases.
Wow, that's insane. And the question is, like, where are we getting exposed to these microplastics? I mean, that's the big one. I mean, the first thing is just make sure you're not using plastic water bottles. I mean, it's fine if you're using a plastic glass to drink out of at home. Let's say you're filling some water out of the water filter and then you're just drinking it right away. We're talking about storing things in plastic or taking it outside of the house and allowing UV or heat to hit it. That's the big deal. Putting it in the cup's not a big deal. It's in and out. But ideally, like with my kids, we get these Yeti mugs that are like stainless steel. So when we store it, it's in that all day. Or
Yeah.
we'll do these the big Yeti ones, or we'll do the the Clean Canteen ones, or we'll do the Life Factory. They make a glass one that's wrapped in silicone to pad it. But those are good options if you want to store it in general. And again, plastic has BPA in it, and BPA, has connected to a 2023 study, Environmental Science Technology. Microwaving food and plastic can release up to 4.2 million microplastic particles. We talked about packaging. It's not just the packaging, it's the heating. Microwave number one, and then UV light number two. And there are toxicology reports linked to BPA exposure and cognitive decline, neuroinflammation, and increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. And I was looking here, 2020, March, right before a big virus kind of came to light in our country here, in the world, I should say, there was a internal report by Blue Cross Blue Shield. And in that internal report, they found an increase in the age group of 30 to 44 of almost 300% of Alzheimer dementia diagnosis of people in the Blue Cross Blue Shield network insurance, right? If you have that, you were studied. And so why? Well, I think we know insulin resistance is known as type 3 diabetes of the brain. But according to this study, the toxins have to play an additional role. BPA is just one out of, I think, I've many. We could probably add glyphosate to that mix as well. I'll pull up that Blue Cross Blue Shield article, but just wanted to put that out in your wheelhouse, Evan.
That's insane. Yeah. And so that microwaving thing that you're reading about, this 2023 paper,
Yes.
it says 4.2 million microplastic particles per square centimeter. so,
Yes. That's
so
crazy, right?
God, so you're talking like, who knows, 100 million microplastic particles if you're microwaving this large container. That's mind blowing. And then obviously, I saw a new paper that came out this past week as well on the black to go boxes. So the black plastic, apparently, the black plastic is way more toxic than just the white plastic. And so I know that's popular even at uh, like a more fancy restaurant that I've been to, like a nice steakhouse, they'll still give you a black plastic to go box. Like it looks a little fancier because it's a darker color, I guess. I don't know what the deal is, but apparently the color makes a difference too.
Yes.
So
Hey, I don't
we'll
mean to be conspiratorial, man, but Blue Cross Blue Shield pulled this study down.
oh, did they? Okay. I
Oh
mean, that doesn't
man,
surprise me at
I'm
all.
gonna pull this up because I pulled it up on air here many times before. I'm gonna find. Oh, here it is. I got a different. Yeah. Okay. So here, I'm gonna just. I like to always bring the receipts. I never want to talk
Pull it
out of
up.
my. You know what? Okay. But I got someone. I got somewhere that reposted it.
Okay. Okay.
Give me a sec. I got this here.
So we're going to go through several strategies today, so stick with us. But number one is avoid heating your food in plastic containers. Number two, we're going to get into the natural fiber, your clothing, your home, your towels, your bedding, your workout clothing, all these ladies putting their booties out in these yoga pants. It's toxic stuff. You got to get, and my wife luckily has found a couple options of some more natural materials for yoga pants. So like these yoga pant girls, Lululemon, it's all bad. Okay.
Yep, exactly. So check this out. So here's the early onset dementia Alzheimer rates grow in young adults, right? So here it is. And then I go, let's go read the full report.
Just dead.
Oh.
Dead link.
Uh-oh.
Interesting. So go up and
so look,
there's
the dead link right there. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Right. So now someone else reposted it though. So watch this one. This was it right here. So this is the Blue Cross Blue Shield study. And so now let's go down here. Boom, boom, boom.
And what you're describing is
right here.
early
Here you go.
onset.
Right here. Most strikingly, the number of Americans between the age 30 to 44 diagnosed with these memory-affecting diseases, this is diagnosed, increased 373%. Remember, I said 300, so I was off by 73. I apologize. It's worse than what we think. So I don't know. Don't want to be conspiratorial, but Blue Cross Blue Shield, this is the report here. This is the primary report. Click it. Something missing, but we got it right here. All right, so you guys can see it. This is it right here. And I looked at this study 3 months ago. It was there, okay? So it is there. You can see it. We'll put the link in the chat so you guys can see it. If you guys are looking live and you want a reference to share with family or friends, you can at least do that. All right, that's in the chat for you all.
That's
all
insane.
right, so isn't that nuts? So in general, BPA is a toxin. It's a big one. Obviously, when it comes to neurological issues, type 3 diabetes, which is a slang for insulin resistance in the brain. Why does that happen? Well, too much carbohydrate, too much sugar, too much inflammatory, junky processed seed oils, that creates insulin resistance. The same enzyme that cleans up insulin also cleans up plaque and inflammation of the brain. When you're too busy cleaning up the insulin, you have less absorptive cleaning capacity to clean up the plaque in the brain. It's it. You only have so much delegation with those enzymes. So that's what's happening there.
Wow. Okay, number two, natural fiber clothing. We got to get into this. So
yes,
2021 paper found that clothing and textiles largest contributor to airborne microplastics inside your home. Mm-hmm. Microplastics are lodging obviously in the lung tissue. These researchers found it in every organ of the body that is creating neurological damage. So it's getting into the lungs, getting in across the blood-brain barrier, getting into your brain. If you are letting your kids sleep in polyester clothing, which could also, by the way, have added flame retardants, get rid of that. Burt's Bees has done an amazing job. Carter's, even some of these like baby toddler brands now have a lot of organic materials for their sleep sacks, their baby blankets, their baby socks, baby onesies. Like, you got to clean this stuff up. I don't even want to donate it. It's like, even if you had that, what are you going to do? You're going to give it to Goodwill and so they could sell it to somebody else who's going to poison themselves?
I just texted my wife to follow up on that too. But in general, first thing I recommend is make sure when you clean your clothes though, because there's a bunch of chemicals and junky stuff within a lot of these cleaners. So make sure you have a free and clear. I use a wash soda, which is a baking soda. Baking soda has absorbent qualities where it can pull stuff out almost like a poultice. So I always do a 15, 20-minute soak on all my cycles with wash soda in it to pull a lot of the residue and the junk out. The more you can pull it out, the less chance that when you wear it, you're going to be able to absorb it back. So do a soak to get as much of that junk out of there. Wash soda, baking soda is going to be the easiest thing out of the gates. And then just make sure free and clear detergent, if you're going to use anything, no scents, no odors. A lot of times there's microplastics in a lot of those scents and those junks.
Yeah, so this is 100% cotton. I have on wool boxers. I have on cotton shorts. I have on wool socks. And I have on leather, elk leather with sheepskin. My wife calls these my Peter Pan shoes.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm not going to lie, man. I like some that have a little bit of spandex or elastin just because I like to have a little bit of stretch in my clothes.
Yeah.
But again, like I spoke to Kalish one time because Kalish, at the time he was married to someone who was like had a Gap, right? And so like big Levi Strauss Gap brand. And he told me, he's like, all the clothes, they are drenched in formaldehyde to preserve the color.
Yeah.
And to prevent like this from degrading so they can be on a shelf and look well, right? So very important. Like never, if you get clothes, never just put them on right when you wear it and just wear it. Like there's so much junk in it. So I always recommend if you wash your clothes, put them on a major soak cycle, get all the formaldehyde, all the junk out of it before you start wearing it. That's a big deal. And so even wash it twice
I can
just to make
smell it.
sure.
If I go into
Oh,
a clothing store, I can get hit with that new clothes smell, just like a new car smell. I can
but
smell the new
it's
clothes.
formaldehyde because they want to keep the color intact and bright and vibrant. So it's a preservative.
Yeah,
So it's crazy. So
that's wild. But all you ladies out there in your yoga pants when you're just going to get your Starbucks coffee, you are being exposed to toxins. There was a whole paper that came out on Lululemon. You could just Google like Lululemon cancer. You could read about the forever chemicals, the PFAS. It's not even just the synthetic fibers. It's potentially some of the other chemicals in those. So you could look up Pact, PACT Organic. They do a lot of really good products for women, like ladies' leggings that are made of cotton or linen or hemp or bamboo. I have some hemp clothing. I love it. I have bamboo clothing as well. I have linen clothing, which I love. They do shrink in the dryer, so it's always a pain for my wife. She's like, I got to separate all your clothing because you can't dry it because it'll shrink. But I love my linen pants.
yes. And again, the more you wash it and the more you're on top of that, the less chemical leakage you have. So the greatest amount of leakage is going to happen in the beginning. So that's really what when you want to do some of these really good washes with wash soda and soak it to really get as much out of that fabric out of the in the very beginning. That's going to make the biggest difference. So just keep an eye on that. So we talked about some of the BPA, some of the plastic stuff. This is big. Um, talked about natural clothing options. We talked about, let me just hear, water. Water's a big one. So we got a lot of microplastics in our water. Microplastics are in 94% of water. 2018 study or media revealed that tap water in the U.S. contains an average of 5.45 microplastics per liter. Okay. Research in Science 2020 demonstrated microplastics in drinking water can enter bloodstream and cross into vital organs, including brain. What do we do? One, if you're going to do it, drink glass water bottles or glass water. Again, I don't drink this water all the time. I like Topo Chico. Their PFAS have dropped over the years and gotten better and better and better.
Oh,
Mountain
good.
Valley has zero. Gerald Steiner's good. So these are all really good brands. So glass. I also have a reverse osmosis water filter. So that's going to be 4 or 5 kind of like filtration stages. It's got a silicone bladder where it holds the water. And so there's no microplastics coming in from the silicone bladder, which is great. And then we have a whole house right in that room over there, which is an activated charcoal carbon based whole house system. So that filters out some, but again, your RO system is going to be the best. And you can even test your RO. So, like if you get a TDS meter on Amazon, you'll see the typical tap water will be somewhere between 3 to 400 ppm, and that'll be detected on a TDS meter. It'll just say like 330, 350. You go put your RO system in, your reverse osmoser, where it has a semi-permeable membrane, 4 to 5 different membranes, and you run it through, and then you take that water and test it with a TDS meter, you'll find you're down at 18 to 20. And that's about
Wow.
a 98, 99% reduction of particulate. And that includes anything on the microplastic side. So good RO filter is going to be excellent. You can get some portable ones if you don't have access to a home that you can change plumbing into, then a good either topical one, whether it's clearly filtered or whether it's AquaTrue or Aquasana. Those are a couple of good brands. There are others out there that either have a good RO or a good kind of carbon-based filter system. We'll put some links down below. Evan, thoughts on that?
It's freaky. And that's why we love having whole house water filters. You and I have been talking about this for a decade now because think about when you have your dishwasher, right? And your dishwasher is creating hot steam. You're likely leaching stuff out into your breathable air in your kitchen. When you're taking a shower, you're getting exposed by breathing in the
Bingo.
shower. There was a study years ago done on the byproducts. So this is not microplastics, but the trihalomethanes, which are the disinfectant chemicals that are left over in your tap water, and how that is a big contributor to cancer. One study estimated that half of all cancers could be traced back to the trihalomethane exposure in a hot shower. So ladies in there just singing and whatever to Bruno Mars, you got to make sure your shower water is filtered. So do this, do this, do this. Yeah, it's wild that the microplastics in the water is nuts. And then,
And a whole house carbon system is going to be good because you'll get a pre-filter and a
yeah,
post-filter on that. Plus, you'll have the carbon, and it will do pretty good. I just do recommend get the RO though for also for the drinking water because that's going to get you that super high level. And just make sure you add some electrolyte support back in that because you will pull out a lot of electrolytes. People make beefs on it, but here's my deal: it's easier to add electrolytes in than pull toxins out. Pretty simple.
Yep, I'm down with that. Processed food, obviously, processed food's all contaminated. They've done papers on that. 88% of tested processed food samples has microplastics. So, duh. I mean, of course,
Yep.
because it's going through machinery, and when it goes through the machinery, you probably know this, but commercial kitchens apparently they're not allowed to use wood cutting boards. So, if you're going to a commercial kitchen, anything that's cut up is probably cut on a plastic, hopefully like a stainless steel countertop, but it could be a plastic cutting board they've used in
Right.
the kitchens. I've seen that even at Chipotle years ago. I remember seeing them cut up the chicken, and it was on a plastic cutting board. And so that's why if I'm going to go to a restaurant, I want a piece of steak on a stainless steel grill, or give me a burger patty right on a grill. I don't need you to cut it, slice it, dice it for me, throw it on the grill and take it off. I want as least exposure to packaging and cutting as possible.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, man. That makes a lot of sense. So, in general, get the water filtered, get that dialed in. Also, how do we support detoxification pathways? I mean, the first thing is clean filtered water. The solution to pollution is dilution. Try to have all your food stored in Pyrex glass. That's what I use. Or if you're going to use plastic, like I use a simple glass in the morning where I put some water in and just down it right away. There's going to be no exposure on that because it's in and out. It's simple. It's easy as pie. But don't store stuff in plastic. If you're going to have your water, like, sitting on your desk all day, have glass, have stainless steel, get a Yeti mug, get something like that. That's dialed in. Like my kids all have Yeti mugs. And I'm not sure, like, if your kids have issues too, like my kids are always slamming their Yetis around, dude. It's like, boom.
They're
So
weapons. Yeah.
dude, they're weapons. They're like flinging it around. So I
Yeah.
bought silicone bottoms to put on the bottom of it
Yeah.
because they come into my like beautiful like quartz countertop and they'd be like, boom. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? That's so expensive. So we got silicone bottoms to put on the bottom of the Yetis, which are key. So that's a good option. But detoxification wise, right? This is why one, you're gonna get exposure. So don't be that anal about it, right? Like just do the common things with water, store your food, don't use microwaves or plastic or microwaves in general. Do your best with fragrances and cleaning compounds, and be on some NAC, be on some glutathione, be on some binders. Eat sulfur-rich vegetables, whether it's garlic, onions, your cruciferous, your broccoli, your asparagus, your cauliflower. These are all going to have good compounds like diindol methane, indole 3-carbinol. Healthy gut bacteria helps convert some of these sulfur to good compounds that help detoxify these estrogenic compounds. And don't fall prey to, oh, it's BPA free. That just means it's BPS, not BPA. That's the only difference, right? So there's still going to be estrogenic like compounds. So you still want to avoid plastic in general, and get on board some supplements. Like you have your line. I have one called GI Binder that has zeolite, it has chlorella, and it has activated charcoal or activated carbon from bamboo. So these are wonderful binders. You're going to have things that you recommend too. We're going to use NAC. We're going to use some glutathione, some good sulfur. Why do I like NAC with it? Because glutathione is too big to cross the blood-brain barrier a lot of times. NAC can cross the blood-brain barrier, and then it can convert to glutathione in the brain. And so you want to take glutathione with NAC.
I
Plus,
have some.
NAC is pretty cost effective too.
Yeah, well said. I have some exciting news, which is that there is a paper that came out in September 2024, and it was discussing the removal of microplastics by using activated charcoal.
Bingo.
Now, this is a paper that is based on water. Okay, this is not saying it does this in humans,
Mm-hmm.
but it does it in water. Here we go. 94% removal of microplastics using activated charcoal. So
Yep.
that's freaking exciting because you and I have been talking about and using binders for a long time now. And we use it for heavy metals. We use it for pesticides. We use it for mycotoxins. But now it
Yep.
appears the same binders we're using for these other toxins are actually helping with microplastics. So thank God we have a great solution there, meaning if you are ingesting from food, water, airborne, hopefully we're going to be grabbing onto that. And this is why when I interviewed Dr. Nathan years ago, he wrote the great book called Toxic. He said binders for life. And so now I'm basically preaching the same message, binders for life. I take them every night before I go to bed because I like the blend of clay and charcoal that we have. And we've used it in thousands of people. And now with this literature on activated charcoal, microplastics in the water, we can only assume it's helping with the body as well. And so I think now here's the question for you, which I don't even know if it's possible to answer. Okay, great. We can do the systemic catch in the gut, right? We're going to catch it in the gut
Hmm.
with the oral binders. But what about the brain? If we have plastic up in the brain, I don't think a sauna is going to push the plastic out of the brain. I don't think a binder is going to get into the brain. I mean, do you think we're just whatever's in there is in there? Or do you think it's possible that maybe during sleep, the lymphatic system is pulling the microplastics out of the brain, getting back into the lymph, and we can pull it out that way? I mean, I'd like to be hopeful that it's not like this bucket that we can't get to, right? Like this brain is this place where we can't get the stuff out. I'm hoping that there's some level of circulation of this stuff still happening. What's your hunch, man?
Yeah, I mean, you have microglial cells in the brain. These are immune cells that are going to be activated to kind of clean things up. They're the Pac-Man, Pac-Women of the brain to clean it up. So my thing is just really make sure the solution to pollution is dilution. We talked about how, hey, that was what water, 95% water that they were looking at. It removed 95% of EPA in water. Well, we're 70% water, right? So I would think that there's going to be some correlation with that. Plus, if we have a good diet and we're trying to do good, we're trying to eat organic, we're trying to reduce a lot of the plastics in our water. It seems like water and our storable plastic for our food and things that we heat it in are going to be the big vector. So just try to be on top of that. Like, just look at where 80% of it is and don't worry necessarily about that last 20%, because the goal of being healthy is adaptation. Adaptation is a sign that you're healthy. So if we can remove 80% of that stress, your body should be able to handle that last 20%. Now, I mean, people that have autoimmune conditions that are really sick and they have to be 100%. But I'm just speaking for everyone. Once you get the core stuff out and you get some of the supplements in, you get some of the binders in, usually you're going to have a little bit more flexibility to handle that last little bit.
I'm trying to figure out here what is the size of microplastics measured in microns, because most of the air filters that we use are going to filter 99.9% as small as zero point 0.3, and some of our air filters that we discuss can go down to zero point 0.1 microns. It looks like you have different sizes of microplastics. Obviously, you have large micro, small micro, and nanoplastics. The nano, man, they're tiny, they're smaller than one. That's some small. Let me just convert this, make sure it's right, into microns. I'm just trying to figure out how much are we grabbing with the air purifier.
Mm.
Okay, so it looks like this is exciting. So it looks like a nanoplastic could be considered around 1 micron or maybe a little bit less. So to me, based on this brief overview of the different size particles, it looks like most air filters are going to grab a lot of these microplastics, but
Yep.
maybe not all of the nanoplastics.
Yep. And
And
then
those are the
also
ones.
within the water, our RO is going to remove 90 to 99% of microplastics depending on your system. So the more stages, probably the better, right? So go for like a 4 to 5 stage system, the better. And then when we add electrolytes, there's different electrolyte products that are out there. I'll typically use a combination of Redmond's real salt's great. There's Celtic or Himalayan. Some you may have to add a little bit more potassium or get magnesium separately, but you can always add a good potassium in there. In my line, we use potassium synergy. Evan has his own electrolytes too. We'll put them down below. But these are some good, simple options just to get some electrolytes back in. I'll try to just do in the morning a nice glass of 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of Redmond's real salt. You can do Himalayan or Celtic and do that once to twice a day. And also salt your food pretty liberally with it too.
Yeah. So you got the dietary stuff cleaned up, the packaging, the food contamination to go boxes, your plastic Tupperware containers. Hopefully, you've cleaned up your cooking utensils. You're not using plastic utensils for cooking. You've got stainless steel, you've got wood, you've got bamboo, you've got silicone for maybe your spatulas, and you've got your natural linens. So your beds, your pillows, your pillowcases. You want to make sure all that's cleaned up. Your children's pajamas, your children's bedding products, your kids' stuffed animals. We do organic cotton stuffed animals. We don't do any like synthetic stuffed animal material. Because think about it, those kids are like, they want to hold this little baby tiger or whatever, and it's 100% polyester. And so I try to avoid that. You've got the water filtration, the air filtration. You've got the binders, removing 94% of it in water. So I think we're going to be okay. It is freaky, but the people that are not taking this stuff seriously, I'm not going to like give you a death sentence, but based on the literature, 6 times more microplastics in the people that died with dementia than the other people. So like everyone apparently has microplastics in the brain according to these cadaver studies, but the highest levels are the demented people. And you cannot afford to get dementia. I've seen people go through it. It's expensive. When you're in these assisted living facilities, you're talking $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Like, it can bankrupt you. So you got to take this stuff seriously now in your teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, so that when you're in your 80s, you don't have dementia and you're not paying $10K a month to live in assisted living.
And the sad thing is too, 90% of all healthcare costs come at the last 10% of life. That is just the most sad thing about it.
I believe
And
it.
you're never going to see cures for these things, like from a pharmaceutical cure. The reason why you cannot cure something when there's multiple causes, it's very difficult to cure something, because to cure it, there has to be this issue, this one cause. And if we stop this cause, so like scurvy, right? Scurvy is going to be caused by low vitamin C. You have to have very, very low levels. So if I give someone vitamin C, right, outside of the fact that, maybe they have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis and there's massive blood in their stool, outside of that, kind of malabsorption available, you cure scurvy. But when it comes to these multi-system, multifactorial, meaning there's multiple parts of your physiology that's being stressed out to create these type of symptoms, plaquing of the brain, excessive oxidative stress, neurological dysfunction, inflammation, whatever, right? Microglial activation, whatever it is, there's so many other systems at play that are being impacted. So you can't just, move one piece and say, oh, we control that. That way this is good. There's a lot of, it's like a spider web where there's so many pieces or web coming into the middle. The middle is the disease, and there's so many inputs to that disease. A drug's good if there's one input, but when there's multiple, it's going to be hard. So Evan talked about, we talked about BPA as one thing. Well, that's just one part of plastics. What about phthalates? What about BPS? What about other microplastics and nanoplastics? What about glyphosate? What about mold toxins? I mean, you can just see this list kind of gets pretty daunting when you start going through it. And that's why I'm just like, focus on the inputs that you have control over: air, water, food storage, and then water storage. Your water bottles, what you put your leftovers in the fridge, water filter, RO, eat organic. Like, my wife went to the Thai restaurant like last year, and they put all her hot soup that she wants, hot veggie soup, in this big freaking plastic container. I'm like, honey, next time you tell them, wait to serve it, you will bring a nice Pyrex glass dish and they will put it in there. And so just be smart with that. If you're going to get takeout and it's going to be really hot, try to bring a glass dish and tell them to wait to serve it until you get there.
Yeah, yeah. Or, I mean, I know locally I've had some soups where hopefully if it's in restaurant, you'll at least get it in a ceramic bowl or
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
better. Oh, and the restaurant I went to, right? So there's a restaurant nearby that's like a Japanese steak place, and they bring out all their steak on hot plastic. And I'm like, no, 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 ceramic, only ceramic. I'm like, there's all kinds of hormones being released. And also, too, my wife was at the grocery store, and they had a little sign saying, hey, there are chemicals, please do not let your kids touch the receipts. There are chemicals in this receipt that can impact your kids' hormones. And I've been saying this 15 years. So when there's like a receipt, I'm like, no, 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 please don't touch it. Just put it in the bag. It's okay. Like, I don't want it. Or like, just hold it up, picture. It's on my credit card. It's fine. Like, I don't need it, right? Because there's a BPA residue in the receipt. Why is it in a receipt? Because if you don't put BPA in a receipt, within a week, it starts to yellow. It's like, well, I'd rather have a yellow receipt than chemical in my receipt, right? And
Agreed.
the smart people at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, you'll see them, they'll have gloves on because they're always doing the receipts. So the smart ones have gloves on to decrease the exposure because they know.
Now this is like a little bit of me. I don't know. I'm sure there's some term here. I'm being a bad boy. But if you look at the majority of women at a cash register that are touching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of receipts, I'm seeing a correlation, okay, not causation, obesity and receipt exposure. I've seen a lot of overweight women working at checkout counters. Now you could say, oh, what about their diet? But just from the effects, you and I had a couple of papers written up here on the impact of this and how this is leading to estrogen dominance. This is causing fibroids. This is causing endometriosis. It's saying here, 2020 study, reproductive toxicology, women with high BPA exposure, more irregular menstrual cycles, estrogen imbalances, fertility issues. And so I think you got to be careful. If that's your job, protect yourself.
Yeah, I mean, now, like when I get a receipt, I'm just like, picture my kid the other day. He's like, "Dad, there's a receipt," and he like grabs the little corner of it and just kind of brings it over because he doesn't want to grab it with his whole hand. Because I've kind of traumatized him. I'm like, "Don't touch that. There's hormones in
Oh God.
there." So he knows, he gets it. But I'm gonna guess the correlation is that people that are aware of receipts, they're probably also aware of what their water bottle's in. They're probably also aware of where they're storing their food. They probably have a water filter. There's probably just they call it a healthy user bias, right?
Yeah.
People that have that healthy awareness, they're doing other healthy things in their life. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
So a couple other things. I want to get into hormones. Hormones are a big deal because we're talking about microplastics in the brain. But guess what? BPA exposure has been linked to hypothyroid. That's a pituitary issue where TSH in the brain starts to go high, and that impacts hormone conversion downstream. T4, T3 can be low. 2019 study, clinical endocrinology found that higher BPA levels had significantly lower T3 and T4. Also, chronic exposure to microplastics increases oxidative stress. That means a loss of electrons, which then is associated with cortisol, high cortisol, and more adrenal stress. So, high cortisol, and that can also impact your DHEA, which is your sex hormone levels. And in men, we see one study I want to pull out. This is great. Got it right here in my little list. Okay, here we go. There we go. Here it is. Microplastics release BPA and phthalates, which act as xenoestrogen. Xeno means foreign estrogen. So when we talk about microplastics, microplastics or xenoestrogen is the big umbrella. And then like BPA and phthalates are the chemicals under that umbrella. Okay. They have estrogen like activity. So if it's a guy, when you get that, that's going to decrease the LH signaling from the brain, luteinizing hormone, which talks to the testicles to make testosterone. FSH, right, follicle stimulating hormone, talks to the I think at the Sertoli cells to make sperm. So when you start to screw up this feedback cycle, you have less testosterone and less sperm. So they found that they found that more BPA meant lower testosterone levels, leading to low energy, reduced muscle mass, and decreased libido. And in 2022 study, they found that men with higher levels of BPA in the urine had lower testosterone. They also saw that the more microplastics they had lower sperm count, lower motility, which is the movement, and morphology, the shape. That was 2023 study of toxicology reports. And they also saw more DNA fragmentation, more DNA damage of the sperm. So when we look at fertility issues, it's typically 40% on the men, 40% on the women, 20% is unknown. And it's very simple with the men. I mean, women have to do the same thing. Eat organic, no plastics, no glyphosate, right? Keep sugar and carbohydrate in check for your activity and your weight. Like pretty simple, organic, clean. And we can also add in NAC to deal with the oxidative stress. We can add CoQ10 in to deal with the oxidative stress of the sperm, of the egg. So we can do all that. And again, all this stuff in men, it impacts women differently because men predominantly have testosterone 10 times more than estrogen. It screws up the feedback loop with women because they have more estrogen. But people don't know this. Women still have 2 to 3 times more T than they do E, which is crazy. It's like, what? So yeah, estrogen is still 1/3 of what they have testosterone in their body. But if they add more estrogen, that creates what's called estrogen dominance. And that's where you're going to see more infertility, fibroids, endometriosis, PMS symptoms, mood, cramping, breast tenderness, irritability, brain fog, etc. So in women, it can drive more of the PMS symptoms before you bleed and during bleeding, and also month-long symptoms. And for men, it creates more of this hyperfeminization, fertility, sperm issues. So it really has negative impacts on both sexes.
That's wild. How about this last paper here? The plasticizer, these are these plastic compounds, reduce nitric oxide levels. And so it's talking about an issue with
Yes.
erectile dysfunction. Now, you've
Mm-hmm.
got people like Logan Paul and Jake Paul. These are guys in their late 20s, coming up on early 30s. Their audience is a bunch of young men, probably ages 14 to maybe 35. And they've done sponsorships, and some of their friends I've seen doing sponsorships to these young guys for Blue Chew, which is basically like a chewable off-brand Viagra. And so it's now becoming cool, trendy, popular. These kids are being marketed to in their teens to take erectile pills. You can look it up for yourself. Blue Chew, these massive advertisements are getting millions of views. These videos, they're doing podcast sponsorships with these guys, marketing erectile dysfunction drugs to young men. And so, right here's in the literature, reducing nitric oxide, and that's essential to maintaining a good erection. And so, you got these guys, obviously, there's internet porn, there's other factors there, there's mental, like neurotransmitter issues and stuff, but wow, this is wild. And so, you're saying it's not a stretch for me to say, seeing a woman struggling with her weight, dealing with receipts all day, you think it makes sense. The thyroid issues, the endocrine disrupting, it makes sense.
It's a healthy user bias, right? When you see someone doing, it's like when you go to the, McDonald's, right? The person that goes to McDonald's frequently is probably not the same person exercising, worrying about supplementation, having a water filter, right? It's a health, they call it healthy user bias in the literature. And you were talking about that endothelial synthase, right? Because this whole thing was about microplastics in the brain. We talked about anytime you create gut issues, you create brain issues. Anytime you create hormone issues, you also create brain issues because these hormones are vitally important for inflammation reduction, healing, and regeneration. And so when you screw up the hormones, you also impact the neurological tissue being able to heal and regenerate. But you also mentioned that endothelial synthase, which is about blood flow. Well, guess what? We need healthy levels of blood flow to the brain. So if we decrease brain blood flow, that's going to mean less frontal cortex activation, less ability to problem solve, more brain fog, more cognitive issues, less quickness on your feet.
Yeah, which we already have enough sleepy zombies in this world on pharmaceutical medication, so we don't need plastic and pharma in your brain.
And
So,
the first sign of reduced nitric oxide or any blood flow issues is going to be erectile dysfunction. And I can't tell you, man, in my practice, I have so many 20-year-old men with erectile issues. Now, again, we get great success improving it because we fix the underlying root issue. And a lot of times their nervous system is fried because maintaining an erection is a parasympathetic nervous system response. And so if you cannot maintain parasympathetic function, that's the vagus nerve, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? That's the parasympathetic. That Vegas literally means wanderer because the nerve starts here and wanders all the way down into the solar plexus. And so that's parasympathetic recovery, healing. And most people, I say women and men, they have fried adrenals because of cortisol, because of stress, because of inflammation. And then, of course, the orgasm is sympathetic. So most people can hit that orgasm. It's just premature. And then also it fries their adrenals more and they feel worse afterwards because their adrenals are already beaten up. So just a little tidbit there.
yeah, we could do a whole show on that. So, if you all need help clinically, we can do some testing to help you investigate. We run chemical profiles. We can measure glyphosate. We can measure heavy metals. We can measure other pesticides. We can measure plastics. We can measure xylene and benzene. We can measure tons of environmental chemicals. So, if you've never had a really good functional medicine workup done where you're looking at chemicals, the potential for plastics, the potential for gut infections, parasites, worms, you name it, we can do it for you. And we work clinically worldwide. So we can get these labs pretty much anywhere. We have international distributors. And so we can get these tests to you. And then after we get the results, we'll do a call. We'll look at everything with you. We'll make a protocol to help get you better.
Yes. So big thing out of the gates. All right. Organic food, water filter, store your food in Pyrex or glass. Do not microwave anything in plastic. Do not pour hot tea, coffee, anything in plastic. When you go out to a restaurant, make sure it's ceramic or glass they're serving it in. If they serve something hot in plastic, send it back. Have healthy cruciferous vegetables in your diet. If you can't handle that because you're bloated, then look at getting your gut looked at and tested. Be on hydrochloric acid or enzymes to make sure you're digesting your proteins because that's where all the sulfur amino acids come from. Be on some kind of healthy seeds, whether it's chia seeds or flax seeds or just healthy fiber from those cruciferous vegetables, or just be on a good binder like my GI binder or Evans binder that has some activated charcoal, that has some chlorella, or that has some zeolite, which comes from volcanic ash. Water filtration's easy enough. When I was a college kid, I remember my first purchase when I got super into health is I bought a reverse osmosis filter when I was 20 years old. That was my first, okay, I'm dipping my feet into health, right? And so get a good RO filter, or at least get one of these gravity ones that have some lab data supporting that it decreases the toxicity in the water.
And you're talking less than $100 because the average person hearing you say all this, like, oh my God, must be nice. No, it's less than $100 now to get a good quality filter. Now, your Britas and all that, I still think are pretty poor, but some of the stuff we're referencing, check the links below. We'll be able to share some good products. Less than $100, you can get a decent filter, give or take 500 to 1,000 for a really good home system. And then obviously the lab testing that cost extra, supplements cost extra. But guys, the diagnosis of cancer, dementia, Parkinson's, these bankrupt families.
That's
Bankruptcy
why
due to health issues is
people talk
huge.
about people talk about like cancer cures. I'm like, how are you curing cancer when you got all these microplastics in your water, in your food? How do you do that? I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my head around it. You have to figure out what the input is. Now, there may be palliative modality to help that, but you got to figure out the input. And when, how they first found out about BPA, actually, if this was a tough study, I think in the early 90s, where they were putting like cancer cells in these test tubes. And they're just like, what the heck? Like these test tubes were growing cancer like crazy. And they're like, what is going on? And they were like, oh, they were using these plastic test tubes. So they switched to glass and it didn't happen. They're like, what? And so they like figured it out. This is at Tufts, that there was something in that plastic. And then that's where the kind of whole BPA thing came out. Now there's more than just BPA. There's BPS, there's phthalates. Phthalates are what makes the plastic like soft and malleable. But that's how it first came to light. And so when you're looking at cancer cells in a test tube and it starts to grow, that kind of tells you you're kind of adding fuel to the fire, right?
Good Lord. So do your best. We always have action steps for you guys. That's why we're here. So make sure you're subscribed to the show. If you happen to just stumble upon this, I mean, we're 12-ish plus years into podcasting. So make sure you're subscribed to Dr. J's Justin Health. And that is an amazing podcast where he has other guests outside of me as well. And then my show, The Evan Brand Show, once again, 12 plus years, 500 plus episodes that we both have. So make sure you're subscribed if you stumbled upon here. And then if you need help clinically, reach out, evanbrand.com. You can get access to me. We could do consults and lab testing worldwide. Dr. J is available at justinhealth.com. Consults worldwide. You guys reach out. We have people tell us like, I've been listening to you for years and I just now started this. It's like, I could have saved you suffering. You've been suffering the last 5 years. You've been listening to us for 7. Why didn't you reach out 7 years ago? And they never have a good reason. Sometimes it's
Yes.
financial, but usually the reason is like, oh, I've been busy. It's like, just do it. Just get the labs done. Some urine and stool can change your freaking life.
Yes. And if you're listening to this and you're like, Dr. J, I am so freaking overwhelmed. What do I do? Pyrex, get rid of all your storable plastic. Get Pyrex. The plastic's okay. Like if you're like out for a couple hours and you want something that's you can carry with you that's not going to break. I remember, dude, in college, man, I was this kid with these glass bottles, dude, and like 5-6 times a year, it would like my bag would hit hard and it would just break, and I'm like, oh. So I got the canteen ones, right? Those are good, but get a good RO system if you can. If you have $300 for an RO with like 150 for an install for a plumber, and you own a place where you can do it, that's the easiest because you always have this gallon and a half that's always full. You use it, it fills it up. If not, get one of the gravity plastic ones. Here's the catch. When you put the water in it, it fills it up. Pour that water right out into your stainless steel Yeti. Don't let it sit in the plastic for more than a few hours, okay? So that's the catch on that. That's at least a cheaper option. In the meantime, add in some NaC, add in a binder at night. At least start with that. That's a good, easy first step.
Yep. Amen. We all reach out. We'd be happy to help you guys. Stay tuned to the show. We'll be back again real soon.
Have a good one, y'all. And then, by the way, links, evanbrand.com. Reach out to Evan. Evan sees patients like this that we talk about in the podcast worldwide. evanbrand.com and Dr. J, justinhealth.com. We'll have links down below for products we recommend, as well as to reach out to us. All right, guys. Have a good one. Take care.